Good afternoon and hello everyone. On behalf of the British Council and Central Board of Secondary Education, a very warm welcome to everyone present here and the educators who've joined us virtually from all across the country. We welcome you all to the competency-based education project, Open Day 3. I am Peenal Rana, Senior Manager Education, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. Before we begin, we would like to highlight a few key points related to the program. We will run the session in a blended format with a few educators joining us face-to-face here in the theatre of the British Council, Delhi, and many school leaders and teachers joining us virtually from across CBSE schools in India through YouTube Live. All the videos, presentations, and website links that you'll see in the event today will be shared with all attendees at the end of the 3-day event. We will also be sharing the catalog of the EdTech presentations that will be made today during the presentations. At the end of every session, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. We request all the teachers and school leaders who are joining us virtually to put their question in the chat box. We will not have any breaks in the event today. However, those of you who are present here in the theatre can step out for water and comfort breaks. We will finish the event at 5 p.m. followed by high tea in Charbagh. So moving on, British Council in partnership with the CBSE initiated the competency-based education project in March 2020. Together, we are working to bring a systematic change in the school education system and move away from rote teaching and learning to competency-based teaching and learning. Now let us watch a video that will give you an overview of the competency-based education project.
Rote learning has been a common practice in schools across India. A system defined by memorization. A system that focuses more on content-based learning. With the visionary National Education Policy 2020, the focus has now shifted from content to competency. The new policy calls for a breakdown in artificial barriers between subjects and development of higher-order thinking skills. It highlights the need for an assessment system that encourages real learning. Competency-based learning enables high-quality education in real-life context. It emphasizes on predefined competencies at each level of the student's learning journey and takes them beyond the confines of their textbook, linking their learning to life. To support competency-based education, British Council entered into a partnership with the Central Board of Secondary Education in March 2020 and launched the Competency-Based Education Project. As a part of this project, British Council and its knowledge partner Alpha Plus, in partnership with CBSE India, present the Competency-Based Assessment Framework. Designed in collaboration with UK experts, the assessment framework provides professional development to education system leaders, teachers, and examination designers. Under the direction and guidance of CBSE, the project uses assessment as a driver and motivator of change in teaching quality in the classroom. Overall, the Competency-Based Education Project provides mentorship support for the teachers, embeds new learning into classroom teaching practice, guides reading, English, maths and science teachers of classes 6 to 10 to drive practical learning, strengthens the capacity of schools to create high-quality competency-based question papers. This project will directly support 15 education leaders, 2,000 school principals, 15 senior government leaders, 180 test item writers, 360 master trainers, which will further impact 25,000 CBSE schools that include 2,000 JNVs and KVs, 132,000 teachers and 20 million learners by 2024. 4 high-profile UK organizations will contribute their expertise to the project. The Competency-Based Education Project aims to bring about systemic change in teaching, learning, and assessment practices by 2024. The project will not only make a lasting impact on the education ecosystem, but will also help students realize their potential so that they can fully contribute to making the country and the world safe, sustainable, prosperous, and peaceful.
To add to the video, all these project resources like learning framework, lesson plans, question banks, etc. are available on the CBSE microsite. Now I would like to request Ritika Chandaparuk, Director Education, British Council, India, to come on stage and start the event with a welcome note. Ritika, can we have you on stage?
Hello, good morning to all those in the UK, and a very good afternoon to all in India joining today's program, both physically here in the British Council as well as online. So thank you for taking the time to come forward and do this event with us. Today is actually the third day of a series of 3 days that we are doing. And we did it over 3 days to allow everyone to find a convenient time and slot to take part and to listen in, whatever may have been their schedule. And we are very, very, thankful to see that 22,000 people have actually joined in the program from all over. So if you're thinking that this room looks a little empty, it's actually quite crowded in the space outside. I have to also, I'd really, really like to thank my colleagues in DIT, Amy and her team, because they have brought together the EdTech companies that are going to present to you all the, products and services that will be of use to you in your in your schools and, would be good for your students to look at. I also cannot, begin to end my welcome address without thanking God, who's become a part of my prayers in the morning. And every day I say, thank you, God, for not letting us have any technical glitches today. And if you can't give that to us, thank you for giving us the most wonderful audience who are patient, kind, and who, bear with all the glitches that have happened and did the journey with us. So definitely our prayers have been answered, and we have managed to bring with you the content, which is very rich, and the different resources that we have for you. And we're very, very grateful to all those partners who have contributed to making that happen. And my request, very sincere request to teachers and principals is, do go and take a look at the resources that we have created. Hopefully, we want to do this not to complicate your life with big documents, but to make it easier for you to have a greater lesson. And when we were thinking about how to do this, I know that teachers who already have to check copies, prepare their students for different exams, will probably feel a little bit intimidated when they look at the thick, tomes that we have produced as a part of the project. And so we decided to create a 3-minute video. Everyone has 3 minutes, to look at it and to get a sense of the approach to take. Where should you be going first? What should you be looking at? And we hope to be able to develop much more, simpler ways of making your life easier. The only thing that you do have to do is to try it out once in your class. And if you try to teach in a slightly different way, reflect a bit about the questions that you're going to ask at the end of the lessons, there's going to be a quantum change in the way your children are going to respond and the way their thinking will change. So my, deepest request to all of you, I deeply request you to think about the way you're going to go about teaching and to make those little changes. And we put together the resources to help you internalize some of those changes and to make them in your practice and make the learning outcome for your students so much better and to grow as professionals as well. So thank you for joining us today. And I'm very grateful to the CBSE. They've been such a great partner to work with. And today is a special day for me to be here with Dr. Manuel and Shweta ma'am, because they're almost like our team now. We don't feel that we are working with a different organization, because we have one of the most deepest concern for us is that the outcome for our students should be the best, because they are the future and we have a responsibility to support them to realize their potential for a better world. So I do hope that this will contribute to that. Just one more point that I'd like to say is that this particular resource is not the answer to all your problems, sadly. This is the start of thinking in that sense. So when you go there and you look at the resources, these are not exhaustive lists. And there is enormous opportunity within it for you all to actually use these creatively. And that's the key word here, how creative you are in adapting those materials for your context, for your students, for different students within a classroom if necessary in that sense. The question bank that we have is actually in a Word document. So it's open for you to copy, paste, change, use in any way that you possibly want to use it. So, I would really seriously say, go and have a look. And then lastly, give us your feedback. We are always listening. I think if there's one thing that we pride ourselves in the British Council, and I do believe that that's the same for CBSE, is that we listen to the people who are going to be using it. So if you find it easy to use, if you found it hard, if there's some parts that you'd like more of, let us know. And we will, maybe we won't be able to do it immediately, but we will definitely think about it when we make projects for the next time. We are making resources, organizing capacity building. It's going to help us. So we'd be grateful if you give us your feedback. Ask questions in the chat box now and also later on, because I'm sure that when you go away from the session and you're starting to teach, that's when the questions are going to come in your mind. So that's the point. You might want to run, right into us, so do that. Don't hesitate to give us your feedback. Thank you very much for being here. Stay with us this last day and happy teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika. I would now request Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, Director Academics CBSE, to come on stage and address the audience. Joseph, sir, can we have you on stage?
Good afternoon, Ms. Ritika and all members of the British Council, my colleague, Dr. Shweta, all the teachers, principals, school leaders, and friends from UK who are joining us on this platform virtually. It's a great partnership between CBSE and British Council that has come to this level. This is a long journey, and it's only a beginning. As Ms. Ritika has rightly said, it is only a beginning of the long journey, wherein British Council has partnered with the CBSE to bring best available resources for supporting the schools and teachers to take the recommendations of the new national education policy forward. This partnership has begun somewhere in the beginning of the year 2019, and a lot of discussions taken place. Ms. Ritika and her team were visited CBSE on many occasions, and CBSE has also received the first draft of the new national education policy, and we were also deliberating on how to take the recommendations forward. It was only at the draft stage. And second main force behind this partnership was India's decision to join in PISA. So when the government of India has taken a decision to be part of the PISA program, naturally, the last performance of India in the PISA also came before us. And the faculties in CBSE, Dr. Shweta, Dr. Pagya, and the entire team in CBSE, they broke their head discussing many things, analyzing the question papers of PISA, analyzing the question papers of the CBSE examinations, our internal assessments, and very clearly come out with a finding that there is a gap existing in what is prevailing in across the globe and what is being followed in the Indian system. And that gap needs to be filled in. So when finally NEP 2020 came, NEP also very categorically endorsed our finding that, NEP very clearly stated Indian school system should move away from rote learning to competency-based learning, and active learning needs to be promoted in the school learning culture. So from that idea, this partnership has been came as a reality, and it has come up to this level as of now. So British Council has also brought in a lot of expertise from UK. The UK NARIC, one of the assessment agency of the UK government, they were roped in to conduct an initial pilot study, and their findings, their report is available on the CBSE's academic website. Based on that recommendation, other partner organizations, Alpha Plus and Cambridge were also roped in, and British Council and their partners, along with the CBSE, has studied the entire recommendations given by the UK NARIC, and final further strategies were developed. In that whole exercise, we came to a conclusion that our classroom transaction needs to be changed. NEP 2020 is not a standalone document. The previous national education policies, as well as the National Curriculum Framework 2005, all these documents recommended for changes in the classroom transaction, changes in the assessment, and also pointed out the need for creating an enabling environment in the classroom, in the learning environment. So as of now, CBSE is focusing on 4 major areas. One is reforms in the teaching learning, reforms in assessment, capacity building of the teachers, and the fourth one is systemic reforms. The changes introduced in the examinations, you might have noticed, every year CBSE started adding 10% competency-based questions in its examination papers. So this year, I think it is 30% questions in class 10 and 20% in class 12. And gradually, the weightage of these kind of questions will go up to 60% of our board examination papers by the year 2025. The idea behind this change is the board examination will further trigger change in the pedagogy, and this will percolate down the line in the teaching learning that is happening in the classroom. Along with this, supporting the teachers through the assessment practices and capacity building can take this journey forward and take our education system to the next level. As all of us know, at present our Indian school system revolves around the rote memorization techniques. We are not prompting our students to think critically, and they are not being prompted to find solutions to the problem. Essential life skills like cooperation, collaboration, all those 21st century skills are not being taken seriously in the classroom. All the focus given in the classroom and the school education is teaching the content and assessing the knowledge acquired through this content. This will not work in the 21st century. If you want to take the school education to the next level, or if you want to develop competent citizens for the country, or if you want to see India as a developed nation in the coming decade, you need to empower your young population by bringing strong changes in the classroom. So this is the beginning of that long journey. That is the role CBSE has taken with the support of the British Council and other partner organizations. Empowerment of teachers and schools, empowering the nation, empowering our young generation. And this journey will continue. And this is the first step towards implementation of the recommendation of the new national education policy. And as Ms. Radhika has very rightly said, there is a lot of resources created out of this partnership. And these are the resources to help the teachers to take this journey forward. The teachers are clueless where to start and how to move forward. So for developing assessment item, for bringing changes in the internal assessment as well as the board examinations, our teachers need support. So that support has initiated through this partnership, and these resources are available on CBSE's website. Day before yesterday, on the first day of this session, it was released for the schools and teachers. And now the next level of capacity building of teachers on a cascading model will happen throughout the country. And in that process, teachers will be trained in item development, how to develop good quality assessment instruments, and how to use these instruments to promote active classroom learning. Assessment is a very powerful tool that can transform the pedagogy and as well as the classroom transactions. So how to use assessment for learning and assessment as learning instead of assessment of learning at the summative level. In a formative manner, how these assessment tools can be used, and for that purpose, exemplars have been generated by this partnership for classes 6 to 10 in 3 subject areas: science, mathematics, and English. So these are all valuable resources available for the teachers. You can make use of it, and also bring that innovation, the culture of joyful learning and experiential learning to the classroom. So I thank British Council and the entire team members of the British Council and its partners to extend support to CBSE to take this journey forward. In the coming years also, we hope that British Council will support CBSE in the innovative practices as well as implementation of NEP. As I remember, in 1988, British Council's partnership with the CBSE started. As a result, the 2-level courses in English started. So then there was a gap. So after a gap of almost 30 years, again, this robust partnership has come together to take this education of Indian school education to the next level. And with the active support from our teachers and the school leaders, we hope that we can spread the message of active learning to the entire CBSE school system. So more than 25,000 schools are part of the CBSE fraternity, and almost 2.5 crore students are in the CBSE schools, and 12 lakh teachers. It's a huge number. And in terms of Indian context, CBSE schools cater almost 10% of the country's school-going children. Out of the 25 crores children, 2.5 crores children are with the CBSE system. And if this active learning, this partnership can produce result, that will start a new beginning in the school education sector of India. Other state boards, state governments, state education departments, they can adapt and adopt from the experiences as well as the strategies adopted through this partnership. So once again, thank you, British Council, for extending your support in bringing these reforms to the CBSE's school education system. And thank you everyone for being part of this 3 days workshop. And with your involvement, with your active participation and suggestion, it's very important to give right feedback. We are always willing to accept your suggestions, your critical reviews, and your partnership for taking this journey forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph, sir. I would now like to call on stage Rebecca Roshan, Senior Academic Manager, British Council, to give us an overview of the CBSE CBE project.
Great. It's great to see you all here today. I'm very pleased to be able to give you a run through of the CBSE British Council competency-based education project. We've already heard in good detail from Dr. Emmanuel as well. So hopefully this will just give you an extra knowledge of what the project has achieved and what its vision is for its completion. I'll also be talking through the key findings of the UK NARIC report that was mentioned earlier and which the project has responded to. Okay, so what is competency-based education? This is a good place to start with the project being named after this approach to teaching and assessment. So competency-based education, or CBE, is an approach to teaching, learning and assessment which focuses on students' ability to demonstrate learning outcomes and attaining proficiency in particular competencies in the subjects that they're taking. It's an approach which empowers students, and it does that by providing meaningful and positive learning experiences, by placing the learner at the centre and engaging them in the learning process. It focuses on real-world application of skills and knowledge, bringing authenticity into the classroom and to the students' learning. And running throughout are core themes of equity and differentiated support, so every learner can make progress and achieve the learning outcomes. When it comes to assessment, the approach is a very strong advocate of formative assessment to guide teaching and learning, and summative assessment is robust and valid. So with that approach to education, assessment and teaching, the vision of this project was to really strengthen the capacity of CBSE affiliated schools, all 25,000 plus of them, which is very easy to do, obviously, to strengthen their capacity to deliver quality competency-based teaching and assessment, to improve the outcomes of students, particularly in maths, science and English reading in secondary classes 6 to 10. So the project has 3 main objectives. It's looking to build capacity in the system for competency-based assessment, looking to give schools and educators the tools they need to be able to apply competency-based pedagogy, and providing a bank of resources that teachers and assessment writers can not only use and adapt, but provide a standard, a model of how to go about assessment and teaching. The project started early last year, and we expect to complete in March next year. So there's a lot of things happening over this 2-year period. And obviously there have been challenges with the situation of the pandemic and everything, but we are on track to complete to that time frame. And as has been mentioned, we've been working with a variety of partners in the UK who are experts in their fields. So what is the impact of this project? I think we've already got a sense from the earlier speakers of the impact, but it's really important to note that CBSE is leading the way by introducing this first of its kind competency-based assessment framework and aligned to the National Education Policy 2020, aiming to improve learning outcomes and promote learning and development of students. Schools and educators are going to have the tools to deliver high quality assessments, to deliver high quality teaching in the classroom. And we know how important it is that assessment and teaching align, because assessments guide students' career paths and future studies. And teachers need to know that the assessments are going to equip the students for those future paths. Learners will see a gradual change from a potentially more content-focused and knowledge-heavy syllabus to one which is encouraging deeper learning pedagogies and getting them to engage their critical thinking capacities. And we hope to see a wider impact on the education ecosystem in India, because this is a project that can be seen as a model that can be replicated and adapted by exam boards and governments across the country. To ensure there's a wider impact amongst all schools and learners. We've talked about the National Education Policy 2020, and I think it's a landmark document that we need to recognise, and this project really does support the implementation of that education transformation agenda, because the NEP does emphasise the importance of shifting from an assessment framework that is summative and primarily testing rote memorisation skills to one that is using more regular and formative assessment, using competency-based assessment that promotes higher order thinking skills like analysis, problem solving, collaboration, and so on. So the project has done many things with many different partners, and it can be quite overwhelming to understand how it all fits together. But in essence, there are 4 strands of work. The first was this scoping review that was mentioned earlier, looking at what the current system is, what the current assessment framework is, and what the strengths of the current system are, and where the gaps are and where it can be strengthened. The second strand of work was developing an assessment framework that meets the demands of the NCERT curriculum and CBSE syllabuses. The third strand was building capacity of assessment writers, assessment designers, item writers, building capacity in pedagogy with training master trainers, mentors, and teachers themselves, and building capacity of senior leaders to manage this change process. The fourth strand of work was developing a bank of resources. So the resources include guidance documents such as learning ladders and assessment specifications. These documents can be used by assessment writers and teachers. A bank of questions that can be used for end of class tests for these 3 subjects, again, which teachers can use, can adapt and or use as a model for their own questions. Some model lesson plans that teachers can refer to, can use straight away, or they can use them to think about their own teaching and how they can tweak their teaching a little bit to make it more focused on competencies rather than pure content. And the fourth set of resources is a series of videos that support teachers' continuing professional development in their understanding of assessment. So let's focus on that first strand of work, which was the review of the current system. So this was undertaken by UK NARIC, now known as ECTIS, who support the development of national education systems and work with qualification, recognition and skills and student mobility. What they did was look at the Standard 10 framework of assessment in CBSE, and they looked at also how ready the system is to embrace competency-based education. They did this by talking to a number of stakeholders. So they talked to students, teachers, school leaders, CBSE experts. They visited schools, they carried out focus groups, surveys and interviews. Much of this was last year when things might have been more face-to-face, but there was an abrupt change to plans. As you can imagine, a lot was carried out online, but still there was good data got from all of those activities. They looked at the syllabuses for Standard 10, and they looked at the assessment papers for Standard 10 exams and those of previous years. And they compared those documents with similar documents in comparative countries and levels of education in New Zealand, Estonia, Malaysia, and the UK. So they had a really good overview of the current system and how it compares internationally. So what they found is there are definitely strengths in the system. But, the current syllabuses have strong theoretical content, which does prepare students for their advanced level studies, prepares them for university and careers in that path. They found that there are already features of an outcomes-based syllabus, and some teachers are already using some techniques associated with competency-based education in their teaching and learning. And there was plenty of positive feedback on the current curriculum, particularly in its broad and relevant coverage. And teachers and school leaders were very positive about the use of continuous assessment. Of course, there are also areas where the system can be strengthened and made more relevant for the needs of students and employers. So these were the key recommendations of the report. Thinking about the syllabus, they suggested that the validity could be strengthened by increasing the focus on higher order thinking skills. They're so critical, but also by engaging with employers and universities, getting their input into the syllabus, making sure the syllabus is relevant for students as school leavers or university entrants. Building in employability skills, such as using calculators to deal with real-world problems in science and mathematics, or in languages like English, making sure students can actually communicate in the language rather than just a focus on reading. They suggested increasing the validity of assessment by providing training for item writers on accessibility, using authentic sources, and so on. Increasing validity by integrating NCRT learning outcomes more concretely as well. Reliability and transparency, they recommended should be increased. This can be done by using more detailed mark schemes, providing training on how to implement those mark schemes. Reducing the number of optional questions, more optionality or more choice in assessment decreases validity, or decreases reliability, I should say. And they advocated the use of external moderation, quality assurance processes for internal assessment. When it comes to fairness and the student experience, they recommended making assessments more accessible by using scaffolding and structured questions, by simplifying the language in questions and the layout of questions, making things more consistent for students to easily understand what the question is asking them to do. And the final area was looking at supporting teachers better in developing competency-based pedagogy. So providing a data bank of resources that teachers can use for end-of-class assessments, or for homework, or for formative assessments, providing documentation to support their understanding of how to implement these ideas, and general training and support in using competency-based pedagogy. So I hope you can see that a lot of the activities I talked about at the beginning of this presentation about the project, they were designed in response to these recommendations. So through the project, we've built a more robust assessment framework that has been suggested. We've built capacity, and we've been developing a bank of resources that teachers and assessment writers can use. So as has been mentioned, you can find these resources on the microsite of CBSE, and we hope that you do find them and look at them and play around with them, use them as they are, experiment with them, adapt with them, and give us your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. So as part of this project, 180 participants attended the 3-day test item writers training to develop the knowledge and skills in how to design and write test items, including different types of questions and their marking schemes in Hindi, English, and Maths for classes 6 to 10. Apart from this, 360 participants attended a 6-day master trainer training, which aimed to create teacher CPD modules on competency-based approach to pedagogy. These trainings were organized by CBSE in collaboration with British Council and 2 UK agencies, Alpha Plus Consultancy Limited and Cambridge Partnership for Education. We will now take this opportunity to honor the test item writers and master trainers with their certificates. Due to COVID restriction, we could not invite all the participants for the face-to-face event. However, we congratulate each one of you and will ensure your certificate reaches you at the earliest. I would like to call Joseph sir and Shweta ma'am to come on stage and give certificates to these participants present here. Along with them, I would request Ritika also to join the certification ceremony. Can we have you on stage, Joseph sir, Shweta ma'am, and Ritika? Yes, sir. On the mark, sir. So we have a white mark. So we will start this with the certificates for test item writers. Abhilasha Srivastav, Alcon Public School, Delhi. Alpana Dutt, ITL Public School, Delhi. Can we have a quick round of applause for all the participants? Anubhuti Rai, Springdale Schools, Pusa Road. Congratulations, ma'am. Bhavna Sharma, NC Jindal School. Gitanjali Satija, Sun City School, Sector 54, Gurgaon. Harpreet Kaur, Kendriya Vidyalaya, Vikaspuri. Indrani Nyogi, Army Public School, Noida. Julie Varghese, St. Columba School, New Delhi. Congratulations, ma'am. Krati Gupta, Nehru World School. Kriti Sharma, NC Jindal School, New Delhi. Manju Batra, Sun City School, Gurgaon. Manjula Mediratta, KR Mangalam World School. Monica Sachdeva, Darshan Academy. Neetika Babbar, Bal Bharti Public School, Pitampura. Congratulations, ma'am. Can we have a louder round of applause for each one of them? Thank you. Preeti Agi, Springdale Schools, Pusa Road. Prerna Bhushan, APJ School, Pitampura. Rajshri Vipin, St. Columba School, New Delhi. Ranjana Chowk, St. Columba School, New Delhi. Congratulations, ma'am. Reena Datta, Sun City School, Gurgaon. Sapna Bakshi, Sun City School, Gurgaon. Shikha Chadha, Bal Bharti Public School, Rohini. Sonali Kawar, Bluebells International School, New Delhi. Surbhi Oberoi, CBSE subject expert. Congratulations, ma'am. Swati Nathani, Sun City School, Gurgaon. Tripti Sharma, Kendriya Vidyalaya, Janakpuri. And Vinita Nair, Maharaja Agrasen School, New Delhi. Congratulations to all the test item writers. We'll now move on to the list for master trainers. Starting with Akhilesh Sharma, DPS Saibabad. Amandeep Kaur, Bal Bharti Public School, Pitampura. Ankita Rajput, Meera Model School. Congratulations, ma'am. Archana Singh, DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon. Divya Roy, Seth Anandram, Jaipuria School, Kanpur. Gunjan Tomar, DPS International, Gurgaon. Congratulations, ma'am. Harpreet Kaur, Springdale School, Pusa Road. Himanshu Joshi, The Khaitan School, Noida. IS Shelja, The Khaitan School, Noida. Congratulations to each one of you. Ishita Mukherjee, CBSE subject expert. Lakshmi Prakash, RBCSA. Livano Banerjee, DPS RK Puram, New Delhi. Congratulations, ma'am. Manisha Sharma, Mater Dei School, Delhi. Mukta Mishra, RBCSA. Nyan Daya, Modern Public School. Pratibha Kohli, Maharaja Agrasen Model School, Pitampura. Congratulations, ma'am. Priya Kochar, Bluebells International School, Delhi. Priyam Dhingra, Springdale Schools, Pusa Road. Pramod Kumar, TK, CBSE subject expert. Rekha Dhawan, Springdale Schools, Pusa Road. Congratulations, ma'am. Can we have a little more louder applause for them? Sakshi Thamija, Mira Model School. Sapna Sukul, RBCSA. Shraddha Singh, Indrapuram Public School. Congratulations, ma'am. Shraddha Singh, Indrapuram Public School. Sayata Tiwari, DPS Saibabad. Smita Saha, Kendriya Vidyalaya, Sector 8, Rohini. Sudipta Chatterjee, DPS RK Puram. Surabhi Pandey, CBSE subject expert. Surjit Kaur, Rukmini Devi Public School, Pitampura. Varleen Kaur, Mira Model School. Varleen Kaur, Mira Model School. YLN Sarm, Kendriya Vidyalaya, Janakpuri, New Delhi. Congratulations, ma'am. Thank you, Joseph, sir. Thank you, Shweta, ma'am. Thank you, Ritika. Let us now watch a film that showcases the linkage between the various resources developed as part of this project.
Assessment. Just the word can send chills down the spine. It does not just bother the students, but the teachers and parents too. Assessments for decades have been rote-based, with very little focus on understanding or application of concepts. These may have served the needs of the past, but they are inadequate for the skills needed in today's world. The world has evolved significantly. So should the learning and assessment in our schools. The National Education Policy NEP 2020 prioritizes the shift from content to competency and provides a framework for this change. In partnership with CBSE, the British Council presents the competency-based assessment framework. Now, Using this framework, teachers will be able to provide greater flexibility in the learning process, focus on students' knowledge, skills, and understanding, test higher order skills. Not only does it support students, but it also extends professional development for teachers as well as assessment designers. To drive this revolutionary shift, the British Council has curated a comprehensive resource bank that acts as a step-by-step guide to implementing the new assessment framework. All you have to do is log into cbseacademic.nic.in. Here, you'll find a host of resources. You can access the learning ladders, which map the syllabus content for classes 6 to 10 for English, Maths, and Science. Assessment specifications for each subject with objectives and test structure. Model questions on how to assess competencies. Question banks to help you locate the appropriate questions. A bank of lesson plans to drive competency-based education in classrooms. And tutorial videos to help you produce effective assessments. As you plan your class tests, you can use the learning ladder to identify the content, skills, or topics you wish to cover from the NCERT curriculum or CBSE syllabus. Then, take a look at the assessment specification, which describes how to create an assessment and evaluate skills. You can create tests by selecting relevant questions from the question bank, or use the question bank for end-of-topic tests and in-class worksheets. Focus on competencies means your teaching will become more interactive and individualized, with more time for higher-order thinking skills. That is why the sample lesson plans are available online to prepare you exactly for this and much more. Simply download these resources and use them creatively in your class. Have you noticed? The transformation towards competency-based teaching, learning, and assessment practices has begun. Go to cbseacademic.nic.in today. Start downloading and using these resources to make it a meaningful and positive learning experience for all.
So moving on, next we have Dave Meller, Director of Assessment and Project Lead at Alpha Plus Consultancy Limited, who will join us virtually and share the outline of the assessment framework created as part of the project. Alpha Plus is an education assessment consultancy based in Manchester, UK, worked on large number of national and international projects for schools, vocational and professional assessment. As part of this project, they created the assessment framework, train teachers to become the assessment designers and test item writers with the competency-based approach. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation with Alpha Plus? Over to you, Dave. We cannot hear you, Dave.
Sorry, apologies. Caught the mute button on my microphone. Hopefully that's better now. Thank you very much for inviting me in today. I'd just like to share some slides. So bear with me a minute while I put the slideshow up. You should see the presentation now. Yeah, that's up. Okay. We were very grateful to be invited into this project. It's been a really exciting project to work on. We worked with EEF as our Indian partners and worked for the British Council and CBSE to deliver an assessment framework that would support competency-based education in schools for science, maths, and English reading in classes 6 to 10. As part of this work, we trained teachers on assessment design and item writing or question writing, and we produced a bank of items, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. So the process for designing the assessment framework started with what learning outcomes, what skills that students need to demonstrate, and those are expressed in the NCERT curriculum. So you can see here the extract from a Class 9 science NCERT curriculum document. And basically it sets out two aspects. One is the learning outcomes. So these are the skills that students are expected to be able to demonstrate. So it's not just about rote learning of content, it's about what they do with their knowledge. And the left-hand side is the pedagogical processes that will support that. What the learning outcomes don't cover is the detailed content. They give some examples. So in order to work out what content will need to be covered, we looked at the CBSE syllabus, the relevant syllabus, and we identified the different aspects of science, in this case, that would need to be covered in the assessment framework. And what we looked to do was to marry up the content that's defined by the CBSE syllabus to the NCERT curriculum. So it creates the subject domain. And that assessment domain is expressed as a learning ladder. And all the learning ladder is it contains the relevant NCERT learning outcomes and pedagogy and matched to the content areas. So in this case, the learner is expected to differentiate between materials and what we've described is the definition of the matter as solid, liquid and gas. So the first two columns are the NCERT curriculum. The third column is the CBSE content matched to that curriculum area. And then the fourth column sets out the assessment objectives, which I'll talk a bit about later, but also gives some examples of the types of questions. Now, these are not exhaustive, but it gives an indication of what is required. And this essentially sets out what it is that we're looking to assess. What it doesn't tell you is how you need to assess it. And in order to do that, the first thing you need to do is to create some assessment design principles. And the assessment design principles are the rules or the limitations on what should be assessed and how it should be assessed. So they set out the guidance for creating the assessments themselves at a very high level. The sort of things that they've covered for CBSE end of class assessments, what's the format? It's only a written assessment. It's not, there's no direct assessment of practical science skills or speaking and listening in English, for instance, because you can't assess those very readily in a written assessment. There will be some assessment of science practical skills. So do they know how to conduct the experiment? But in the written questions, but there will be no assessment of them actually conducting the experiment. So it's a different approach. For English, it's only about the reading and not writing, speaking and listening. That was one of the requirements of the brief. So we focused on just the reading side of the NCERT curriculum. One of the requirements is they need to be marked by the teachers. So it's got to be practical for marking by the teachers. And as I said, they're aligned to the NCERT curriculum and the CBSE syllabus. They need to assess higher order thinking skills and support the teaching of those, because we all know that assessment will drive teaching. And the length of the assessments have got to be manageable for schools and for the students who are taking them. And then things like the fact that calculators can be used, which is a bit different to what currently happens, but it allows you to assess more higher order skills than just, particularly mathematics, than manual calculations. All of this, these design principles were based on the NARIC report, which reviewed the CBSE Standard 10 examinations. So we've tried to align it to the findings of those reports. And what they tell you is what your assessment specifications should look like. The assessment specifications are the more detailed description of the assessments for each of the subjects for the different classes. And they will tell you things like the number of assessments. So in maths, there's 2 assessments, one with a calculator and one without. The number of questions that there would be, the types of questions that will be used. So are they multiple choice or short answer or extended response, those types of questions. The duration of the assessment and number of marks. So it's an hour and a half and it will be 60 marks or however many. And how it will be marked, the nature of the mark schemes. They tell you everything you need to know as someone who wants to write questions and produce an assessment so that you can create your own assessment. The really important thing that they also describe are the assessment objectives. And all good assessments, the assessment objectives are at the heart of what it is you're trying to assess. And an assessment objective is a description of the skills at a high level that the assessment will assess. So it's not the detailed learning outcomes because they're far too granular to design the assessments against. But an example shown here for English shows that the first 2 assessment objectives are about demonstrating understanding of explicit meaning and implicit meaning in texts. So it's about the analysis of those texts and demonstrating understanding of those texts and how meaning is created in those texts. AO3 is about the use of the writer's language to create effects and the structure. So again, it's about analyzing text. And AO4 is about a personal response to the text. So they're all much higher order thinking skills than just straight recall of knowledge. There'd be no assessment of who wrote this text or when was it written, because those sort of recall of facts are not really very helpful when you're looking at a competency-based education system. With these assessment objectives and the assessment specification, we then trained a group of assessment designers and item writers on how to produce the assessments. The item writers were then asked to write questions against a brief using the assessment specification and the assessment objectives and using the learning ladder to identify which aspects of the content would be assessed and what skills and what types of questions. And they wrote between them, we trained about 175 and we have just over 1,500 questions in a bank covering all the subjects and all the levels. And these are presented in an item bank spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet documents all the items, so all the questions down the side here, and it tells you which assessment objectives they're assessing and how many marks. And it tells you, in this case for English, what sort of text is being used and a brief description of the source. For science and maths, it tells you which part of the learning ladder is being assessed. Yeah? And which for particular text types or particular content areas or aspects of the learning ladder that you want to assess. And you can see if there's an item in the bank that will be suitable for you to use either in an end of class assessment or in maybe a topic test, or perhaps for a homework or a class worksheet or whatever it is that you want to do. So this allows you to find and search for different items. With the items themselves, they're presented as a Word document. And you can see here's an example item. And it's been produced on a template, so they all look and feel the same. And it tells you a little bit of information at the start about the subject, the class, and what the file name, so what the reference for the group of questions is. And then it has the assessment objectives and the content references and the number of marks. And for mathematics, it also tells you whether it's a calculator is required, or a calculator is not allowed, or the question suitable for either calculator or non-calculator. So that tells you something about the item. There's then a source, which is any picture or diagram that you might want to include. In this case, it's a picture of a Rubik's Cube. And then the questions. And the questions relate to the source, but also extend the source. And then to go along with the questions, and note that the questions actually tell you the number of marks that they're worth as well. And then to go along with the questions, there is also the mark scheme. And the mark scheme tells you how the marks are awarded. Oh, apologies, I've jumped forwards. So those questions are the questions allow you, because they're in Word as a teacher, to copy the relevant parts, and you can take 3 or 4 questions and you can produce your own test or your own tasks. So you can copy the question and you can copy the source and then just renumber the questions so that they follow sequentially, and you can produce a test for yourself. So it's a useful resource for teachers to be able to use. You can also produce your mark schemes in the same way by just copying them into a blank Word document. And that way, different teachers who might use the same assessment can all mark to the same standard because they're using the same mark schemes. So this allows teachers to create tests from the items. But also teachers can produce their own items. So here's a view of the assessment framework at a high level. And you can see at the top left the 2 source documents that are in green, the NCERT curriculum and the CBSE syllabus. They were used to create the learning ladder. And the learning ladder defines the content that you need to assess. The assessment specification is then based on a set of design principles that were written, and that assessment specification will be for English class 9 and 10, or maths or science or whatever it is. And it will tell you the nature of the assessment and what needs to go into the end of class tests and the style and type of questions and so on. It also tells you the assessment objectives. And using these documents, we commissioned a group of item writers to create the banked items, which appear in blue here. So all the assessment framework documents are in blue. And you can look those up on the item bank spreadsheet. And then as a teacher, you can create your own end of class assessment, your topic test, or homework or class sheets. But also teachers can write their own items. So you can look at the learning ladder and say, I want an item to cover this particular aspect of the learning ladder. Look at the assessment specification and see what sort of assessment objective could be covered, identify what type of question I want to use, and then write that question. And in order to support teachers doing this, there are a series of training videos that tell you about short answer questions, multiple choice questions, how to write extended response questions, the use of level of response mark schemes and so on, and what the item writing process should be and what the constraints are for doing it. So there's some supporting. The videos are about 15 minutes, animated videos from PowerPoint presentations that will help you to be able to write your own items. So you can combine those with banked items to create your own resources. So in a nutshell, this is the assessment framework. This is available on the microsite that CBSE have produced, and it's available for all teachers to use. So I'd invite you in to do so and to use that. It's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Sorry, it's very brief, but hopefully you can go in and explore and see what's there and make use of it. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions now.
So do we have any questions from the live audience present here or from the chat box? Can we have the mic for Ritika? It will be. So the slides will be sent to, after the event is over, the entire presentation will be shared. All the presentations and the links will be shared with all the attendees. Do we have any question? Sujata in the chat box?
Yeah, there's a question from the live audience, and that is, how can we create a practice base for students in this assessment model?
So how do we create a practice base? Sorry, could you just clarify what you mean by a practice base? So
I think they're trying to ask how students can be initiated into these assessments, the competency-based approach to assessments.
okay, thank you. That makes sense. Yes, so the way I would do it as a teacher, I'm an ex-teacher myself, I would look at the topics that you are teaching, and I would introduce, look at the spreadsheet to identify items, and I would introduce some items into classwork or into homework that assess some of the higher order thinking skills. So maybe write some of your own questions that test the knowledge of the content that you're looking at, but then also maybe, let's say you're teaching physics and you're doing something about motion and velocity time graphs, then you could introduce a question that asks the students to interpret a velocity time graph, because they're then required to analyze the data. So can they read off the velocity at a particular time for the object? Can they calculate the acceleration or the deceleration between 2 points on the velocity time graph? You can introduce these things gradually so that the students get used to, instead of just trying to rote learn the content, they get used to trying to analyze or evaluate what they're doing, or they apply the content to a different context. So you could teach it in one context and then apply it to a different context. So maybe you're doing an oxidation reaction and you demonstrate it with magnesium, but then you ask the students a question about calcium and oxidation of calcium. It's a different context, but they're applying the skills they learned for magnesium to calcium to balance the equation or whatever it is that you want them to be able to do. So I would introduce it gradually, and I would do it in class, and then you can build it into the actual end of topic tests and end of class tests. And the other thing that is happening is the CBSE exams are also changing at standard 10 and 12, and they're moving to more competency-based assessment and assessment of higher order skills. And that's happening over the next few years, where it's gradually increasing. So that will help prepare your students for those exams. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, Dave, that does. So we have one more question for you, Dave.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My question is that the way you have a roadmap for assessment framework, similarly, is it correlated with some reflective practitioner strategies also? How will a teacher be a reflective practitioner once she follows these assessment strategies? Thank you.
That's a really interesting question, because it ties together the assessment framework with the good teaching practice. And for me, I think the way I would use the assessment framework and use the assessments is actually set the tasks in class and see how the students perform on those tasks. So on the little mini assessments or worksheets and so on. And then if the students perform well, say on the knowledge type questions where they're showing recall, but perform less well on, say, something to do with analysis, maybe that feeds into the reflection of the teaching that you undertook, so that you look at it and you identify, well, clearly they understood the content, but they haven't developed the skill to be able to analyze the information appropriately. And therefore I need to tailor my teaching so it focuses more on that analysis and less on actually explaining the content, and therefore come back and revisit that in the next lesson or in a future lesson to reinforce. it's part of the, I guess, a spiral curriculum where you kind of try and revisit topics and areas. You can do exactly the same with the skills, where you revisit the analysis skills, because you can do it in lots of different contexts and build students' confidence in doing those skills. So I think it does tie in to that reflective practice. And I think most teachers, you look back at a lesson and you know whether or not something worked well or didn't work well, and therefore do you need to adjust your approach in order to improve it the next time.
I hope that answers your question, ma'am. Thank you, Dave. So we'll move on from here now. So
Thank you
now
very
we have
much.
a session. Sure. Now we have a session on Introduction to UK Digital Expertise by Vipul Bhargava, Department for International Trade. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from DIT? Over to you, Vipul.
Thank you very much. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to start my presentation. Well, a very good morning and a good afternoon to all the teachers over there as well. My name is Vipul, and I work as a EdTech advisor to the Department of International Trade. The Department for International Trade, for those of you who don't know, is a government organization that is responsible for helping British businesses to export to different countries. I've been in EdTech now for about 15 years, so I know a little bit about the sector, mostly working in the UK. So I can hopefully tell you a little bit about why the UK is the leading force in EdTech and why you should listen to some of these companies that are here today. So let's quickly start with the market size. So the EdTech market is, of course, increased tremendously post-COVID. Market's predicted to be worth about $252 billion. So it's a massive EdTech market, right? We saw yesterday with Vedantu raising 100 million at a valuation of over $1 billion. We see lots of EdTech unicorns now coming out of India and other parts of the world. But if you look at where the EdTech companies coming from, you see some very large countries. You see India, China, Brazil, America. These are large countries. UK, with its population of over 60 million, is fairly small. So the fact that UK today produces so many EdTech companies, that is the top 5, just sort of is a sort of attest to the fact that UK has all the right ingredients to produce great EdTech companies. Let's go through some of those of why that's the case, right? So the first thing you need to create some great companies are good education institutions, right? And of course, UK's education sector is sort of quite well revered across the world, including schools and universities, right? So in fact, talking about schools, we heard recently we have some great brands like Harrow and Wellington, which are now going to be opening schools in India. So you see some of these brands have been setting up overseas. So UK school brands have been quite well regarded, including in India. But also you have great universities in the UK. 30 of Times rankings, top 200 global universities, top 30 universities come from the UK. These universities are producing great students who then eventually come out and set up EdTech companies or work for these EdTech companies. One statistic which always attracts me and I find it fascinating is that London actually has the highest number of professional developers by any major tech capital, right? And so that again, because it's got good tech talent, not just from UK, but from internationally as well, it just helps feed in to the forces that are required to set up good EdTech companies. We also have a good ecosystem. I do some work for Department for Education as well, and the DFE is also pushing an EdTech strategy, trying to drive EdTech within the UK, but there are also private players like Emerge, Twinkle Hive. These are all EdTech accelerators that are sort of ensuring that there are EdTech companies that are doing well in the UK. There's also BESA, which is British Education Suppliers Association. It's like an association of UK EdTech companies that ensure there is high quality in those EdTech companies. And hence, it's not a surprise that half of Europe's top 20 fastest growing EdTech companies are coming from the UK. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to visit BET, which is an annual show every January. It's one of the world's largest education technology conference. If you haven't visited, I highly urge you to do that, where companies from all over the world and UK showcase their EdTech products. Right. So again, it's a massive initiative. So you put all that together, and we've got the perfect ecosystem for creating good EdTech companies. Some of the things I wanted to leave you with is the point I made about UK being a small market, only 67 million people. When UK companies are setting up in the UK, they're not starting off thinking, I'm going to only serve the UK market. They start off saying, how do I serve an international market, a global audience? So a lot of the British companies you'll hear from or have heard from are very flexible in how they approach potential buyers, right? So whether it's the need of a local language or the need to partner with your existing providers, British companies can be very, very flexible. The other thing is there's a common myth, which I've come across many times, around price points. People say the UK EdTech products tend to be expensive. I can tell you, sort of working across the world now, UK EdTech products are actually very competitively priced, especially with the cost of technology coming down. So I would never put price as a main factor for not choosing British products. British companies have figured this out. Like I said, we're working across the world, and so they are quite price competitive. So I wouldn't worry about price just as yet. But the most important point, given you're teachers, you get sold EdTech products constantly. Companies are constantly coming in telling you, buy this, buy that. The critical thing here is that in UK, over the last 5 years, there's been a big focus on efficacy. Does technology actually work? Does technology actually improve the student outcomes? Does it actually help a teacher teach? So a lot of UK EdTech products focus on efficacy and ensuring that the products actually work. So that's a big, big advantage of UK products because they've actually thought through some of that. So I don't want to take too much of your time today. I'll leave my email address here for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me an email. But I hope you enjoyed the rest of the sessions from the British companies you're here to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vipul, for the useful insight and setting up the context for our first EdTech presentation by Project Set Limited. So Project Set is a London-based award-winning education technology firm specialized in solutions for collaborative learning. Its solutions are purpose-built for different types of learners, varying from early-stage learners to more advanced learners. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation by Project Set Limited? Dhruv, I request you to keep up to the 10 minutes time for your presentation, followed by 5 minutes for Q&A. We will notify you with a beep sound as you finish your 10-minute slot.
Thank you, Peenal. Can you see my slides? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see the slides.
Great. Thank you once again. So good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are today. My name is Dhruva Banerjee and I'm the co-founder of Project Set. And I'm absolutely delighted to be talking to you today about the tools and solutions that we offer teachers such as yourselves to help drive collaborative learning amongst the student community. Collaborative learning, as you know, is an integral part of competency-based education because it empowers students to work in a team and collaboratively solve problems through which they both develop and demonstrate higher order skills like teamwork, time management, collaboration. And they do it in an environment where you as teachers have complete control. You have complete visibility, you mentor them, you give them feedback, which is sort of formative assessment. And all these are terms that you've heard repeatedly over the last 3 days: formative assessment, collaborative learning, collaborative skills. And that's precisely what our solutions help you do in a virtual or hybrid environment. Our solutions are grounded on sound scientific evidence on the efficacy of learning, and we'll be happy to share some of these with you. In fact, my colleagues may be posting some of the links on the chat tool right now as we speak. And for this, we also have won awards from stakeholders in the UK as well as the US. So I will be talking to you today about 2 tools. The first one is a tool that's designed specifically for middle school learners or early stage learners, where they solve problems which are specific to a particular subject. And the skills that they pick up are typically basic skills like teamwork, and digital skills. And the second product that I'll talk about is for advanced learners, where they work on interdisciplinary projects that build a more broader set of skills. So the first solution today I'm going to talk about is called PALS, which is an acronym for Peer Assisted Learning System. It is essentially a teacher-moderated chat tool, which provides a safe environment for students to attempt challenging problems in any subject. It could be science, it could be maths, English, what have you. And it helps them solve these problems with 3 escalating layers of assistance. First is peer assistance, then hints, and then teacher intervention. Let me actually explain how it works. So a student, when they find it difficult to solve a problem, they're encouraged to post it on the chat tool. And once the teacher approves that particular post, it immediately kicks in the first level of assistance, which is the peer group. So it becomes visible to the entire peer cohort, and they're encouraged to help solve that problem. If they're able to do that, wonderful. If they're not able to do that within a specified period of time, then an AI-driven tool provides them a hint so that it becomes an encouragement for them to, again, try and attempt and solve the problem. The hint can be a similar problem, or it could be a clutch of problems that provides a clue to the students. And then they get an additional amount of time to solve the problem. If they succeed, that's wonderful. If they don't, then the teacher comes in as a third level of support to solve the problem. So as you can see, this kind of a construct exposes your students to a much wider set of problems than they would otherwise get exposed to, without necessarily creating an extra workload on the teaching faculty. You can almost think of this as a WhatsApp, but with 3 very important differences. Number 1, you as a teacher will have absolute control of who gets into this group and what kind of discussions are happening, which you can't have on WhatsApp. The second is the hint tool, where the students are actually supported in the learning process through a tool without teacher intervention. And the third thing is that at the end of every month, you would have a complete statistic of the leaderboard. Who are the top contributors? Who are the students who are solving more problems? That will help you incentivize and encourage those students. We are currently piloting this product in India with the CBSE curriculum in 5 courses: physics, chemistry, maths, biology, and English. It's available in 3 Indian languages. It's Hindi, Bengali, and English, if it's Indian as well. And we are planning to roll it out in other languages as well in the near future. On this particular tool, students are also able to work asynchronously, which helps them address the issues of bandwidth and expensive data connections in India. And we are currently working with the Learning Engineering Consortium in the US with researchers from Carnegie Mellon and Duke University, who are working on a learning engineering construct to validate the efficacy of this product, looking at the student engagement and learning outcomes data. And you'll also benefit from those research outcomes if you join our community. The second solution that I'm going to talk about is for advanced learners, which is a project-based learning tool. And this is a tool where students can collaborate and solve interdisciplinary problems. It could be climate change, other social issues, or any economic problems in a business that doesn't necessarily hit on a particular subject, but cuts across different subjects. You heard a lot about solving real-world problems in the sessions over the last 3 days, and this is the tool that helps your students do that. In this particular tool, students work collaboratively in a virtual environment, but again, under complete visibility and mentorship of you and your co-teachers. This tool actually has 3 key differences from the previous one I talked about. Number 1, it is designed to help students solve interdisciplinary problems, and therefore it comes up with a virtual workspace for each team where it has all the problem-solving tools like file sharing, messaging, video conferencing. The second difference is, in this particular tool, you can appoint a mentor for each team, which could be the teachers from your school. But also, if you choose, you can invite external people like employers, your alumni, or even the parents to come and mentor the students, because these are more mature students who can be opened up to an external audience under your control and supervision, of course. And finally, there is a structured tool for providing evaluation and feedback, which again includes formative assessment. Now, this tool obviously helps advanced learners, but we also offer 3 other advantages with this tool. Number one is that if you want to expose the outputs of the student to public voting, you can do that through our tool very easily. It offers you a virtual public exhibition facility. The second thing is every student gets to create a digital portfolio where all the outputs they create from the projects are automatically archived that they can share in the future, either for their college admission process or any future job applications that they might put in. The third thing is our tool also allows you to participate in events that we conduct. These could be events connecting competition between different schools on project-based learning, or it could even in the future, we are planning to introduce across the borders. So we are planning to introduce competitions between students, school students in the UK and India. As you know, project-based learning has been a pretty old science, but virtual or computer-based project-based learning is a more recent area of discipline where the science has evolved a lot, and we have done quite a bit of research, and we've put in some of our insights and learning into an ebook, which I welcome you to download and refer to. So with that, what I'd like to do is talk about the price of a product. People just talked about competitive pricing. So our tools are priced at 20,000 rupees per month per tool per school. So if you're a school of 1,000 students, that translates to 20 rupees a month per student. That's about a third of the price of a bottle of Thumbs Up. But that's not all. We also have an attractive discount of up to 90% for the first 200 schools that sign up. There's also a discount for schools that sign up before the end of the year. And if you're a non-fee paying school in India, you will get a 50% discount no matter what. Now, if this is of interest to you, of course, we want you to join our community, but only after you learn more about our product, which we can't demo in this current session. So we offer you 3 ways to connect with us. The first one is we invite you to join us in a webinar where we will demo the product, answer any questions that you have. It's at 4 p.m. IST on the 24th of October. You can register either in this link, or you can put your mobile phone on this QR code. It'll take you straight to the registration page, and you can register yourself. It's free, no obligation at all. If you want to have or connect with us for other questions or want a more specific tailored demo, please email us and we will come back to you. Or if you want to just explore our product a little bit more, we welcome you to visit our website. So with that, I'd like to close my session. I'd like to thank British Council for this opportunity. I'd like to thank CBSE, and I'll welcome any question that you may have.
So do we have any questions from the live audience here? Or for the chat box, Sujata?
Yeah, one question is how can peer-assisted learning work with primary learners, or can it work with primary learners?
It's a great question. So if you're talking about primary learning till level, or what we call in India class 5, we do not encourage that with our tool, because our tool obviously is about empowering students, and we believe students below class 5 need a lot more hand-holding. So the first tool that we talked about, PALS, is ideally designed for students from class 6 through class 10. That tool basically encourages engagement among students through incentives, but under complete monitoring of the teachers. So if you're referring to students below class 5, we typically do not encourage the use of this particular tool.
Thank you, Dhruv. I hope that answers your question, Sujata. Do we have any more? We have one from the live audience. Can we have the mic, please? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening. So my question is on PALS. I just want to know that how much assistance is provided by AI? I mean, does it give only hints or ultimately does it solve for them also if they're unable to answer?
It's a great question. The AI is at a pretty early stage right now. So what it does is it looks at the problem the students are trying to solve. And in the first instance, it will only provide a hint. So it's a similar problem or a clutch of problems that provides a clue. It will not solve the problem in the first instance because there is scientific evidence that hints actually work as a great tool to encourage students to solve the problem themselves. So even if we have the same problem solved, we will not expose that yet. But in the final stage, when they have not yet been able to solve the problem despite the hint, that is when we will expose the final problem in case it exists in a solution bank. In case it is not, and it's a new problem, obviously we would request teacher intervention. But once the teacher solves that problem, it automatically gets added to our solution bank and the AI becomes much more powerful. I hope I've answered your question, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruv.
Thank
With
you,
this,
Pinal.
we'll move on to the next session. So moving on, we have the next EdTech presentation by Manga High. Manga High is an online adaptive mathematics learning platform that allows children to learn maths at their own pace and their level of understanding. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from Manga High? Ritika, I would like to request you to keep up to the 10 minutes time for your presentation, followed by 5 minutes for Q&A, and we'll notify you with a beep sound at the end of the 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peenal. Am I audible to everyone? And is my screen visible?
Yes, you are audible and we can see your screen. Continue.
Okay, lovely. A very warm welcome and good afternoon to all the educators who are joining in virtually and in person. I was there at the event yesterday, so I can vouch that it's a very wonderfully organized event. Today, I'm going to speak on behalf of Manga High Mathematics UK, and I'm going to talk about how through Manga High, we can achieve competency-based learning, as well as create a continuous assessment, low-stakes assessment framework for our classrooms for mathematics in India. So to give you a brief introduction about what Manga High is all about, Manga High is a digital resource for classrooms, and not just modern classrooms. Right now, even children sitting at home are doing their home assignments on Manga High, and teachers are getting wonderful reports of what is happening. So it's a modern resource. It leverages the power of games and artificial intelligence to help teach maths. There was a lady in the audience who just talked about AI, and she talked about how hints and solutions are necessary in the act of learning. It just nudges the learner to say, okay, I understand this now. I can go back and try again because I've got the hint or the system has solved this for me. So all of that is baked into Manga High. Manga High is currently being used with 5,000 schools globally. These are 5,000 paying schools, not just in the UK, but Australia, in India, in Asia, in Middle East, and I'm heading the Asian operations for Manga High. To give you a background about the people who started Manga High, one of the 4 co-founders was Mr. Toby Rowland. He was the same person who made a game called Candy Crush, and I'm sure people are smiling there in the audience, those who have either played it or know somebody who's crazy about Candy Crush. So Toby is our co-founder. He saw the kind of engagement that games and specifically Candy Crush invoked from people of all demographics and all age groups. And that's when he joined hand with Professor Marcus du Sautoy. He's a professor of maths at Oxford University. A very, very prolific speaker on mathematics and artificial intelligence. I really urge everyone to look up Professor Marcus du Sautoy. You'll find his TED Talks and you'll find his even his Netflix series. He has a Netflix series called The Code, Finding Maths in Everyday Life. He's on our board of advisors. And the third person who joined them was Mohit Midda. He was from a technology background from Accenture, Deutsche Bank, and London Business School. And that's when they started Manga High in the year 2008 in London. So just a snapshot about what Manga High does, because I'm based in India and I'm looking at all Asia operations, and I speak very much about the national education policy and how we can implement it through Manga High. There are elements of real-time diagnostic because it is a fully synchronous program. Whatever is happening at the students' end, whatever questions they're doing, whatever topics they're doing is immediately real-time reflected to the teacher, as well as the real-time diagnostic is going to the child. So they can self-remediate. They can answer something, they can see where they made a mistake, and then they can go back and rectify it in the second attempt. So that element of real-time diagnostic is there. There's no rote learning at all because it is a one-on-one program. It is not a one-to-many program. Every child will work on their own maths problems, individual math problems through Manga High. So there's no element of rote learning. It is inclusive because there is no pressure on time. So children can take their own time. They can, practice maths at their own pace. Manga High gives them a non-judgmental space to do that. And we are also now expanding to text-to-speech abilities so that those who have certain visual disabilities should be able to hear the question out. Building problem solving and critical thinking skills. This keeps coming again and again in the national education policy in the document, and none of it can really happen unless children start loving maths, right? So our core belief is that every child is a maths person, every adult is a maths person, but because of certain preconceived notions, or because we start alienating ourselves to maths and saying that it's only for the bright students, or only the boys can do well and things like that, too many stereotypes around it. That's what we want to break through games-based learning, through artificial intelligence, and through Manga High. And it's a low stakes assessment. So teachers, it saves a lot of time for teachers to set assignments, check assignments. All of this is automated within Manga High. The program, like I said, has been around for 13 years now and is being used across countries. 50 plus countries are using it, including many CBSE, IB, as well as British curriculum schools in India as well. So a low stakes assessment throughout the year can be conducted. This is again in alignment with the NEP ethos. To give you an idea of the content on Manga High, so one large bucket in which we have our content is our math games. We have games all the way from number line, place value, to advanced concepts like mensuration, quadratic factorization, linear equation, algebra. All of those are there. So many of the teachers today attending maybe grade 6 to 10 teachers. So I want to assure you that games-based learning works as well, if not better, for our secondary students, for 6 to 10 students, as it does for the primary school. And these games are very engaging. They build a context around why you are learning. So if there's a number line, then there's a game we have where the number line is showing negative numbers. So now the negative number line is actually a vertical number line. It just builds a lot of context around what we are learning and how we can use it in real life. The second large bucket in which we have our content is a quiz-based engine called Prodigy. It's Prodigy, not to be confused with Prodigy, which is a different company altogether. Within Prodigy, we have about 100,000 plus questions. These are adaptive in nature. So if a child is doing well, we'll give them a stretch question. If they are struggling, we'll give them a more foundational question. And it covers, Manga High covers students from ages 5 to 16. So you could say somewhere around kindergarten to grade 10 age. And the questions are fairly adaptive in nature. So just to explain the adaptivity, within Manga High, we have very granular topics. So every minimal, every topic has been condensed into a minimal topic, so that even if you've taught just 1 or 2 classes, you can then set an assignment on Manga High for that particular subtopic. And that subtopic is broken into easy, medium, hard, and extreme questions. Everybody starts at the easy level. If they do 3 easy consecutive correct, they move on to medium. If they do 3 medium consecutively correct, they move on to hard, and so forth. And if they do 2 consecutively wrong at any level, they come down. So you can see that every child will be at their own level of understanding, and they will be forming their own pathway, which will be very unique to them. And how we encourage them to get to the hard and extreme questions where they are really pushing their limits, they're really trying to understand that particular topic in whole, is because we have these gamification elements of medal points. So a child can get a bronze medal, a silver medal, or a gold medal, depending on the difficulty level, how many hard questions or extreme questions they are solving. So this really engages the learner. And this is where we utilize that games-based learning mindset to get them to do more and more maths practice, which then translates into better maths outcomes. But instead of just being on the student side and engaging them with quizzes and games, on the other hand, we also help teachers with very extensive reports. So this is a snapshot of one of the reports called assignment report, where on the x-axis are all the topics that the teacher has set for the students, and y-axis is all the names of the students in the class. So in one snapshot, you can see who is struggling, which topic needs more intervention, which needs to be recovered, which topic is absolutely well. So here comparing simple fractions seems like everybody understands that, but there are certain other topics that have issues. Again, this aligns with NEP because NEP also talks about building an e-repository of the progress of every child subject wise. So for maths, this is clearly helping with that, and it also helps identify misconceptions. When we talk about competency-based learning, what is that all about? Every child should be building on their personalized, individualized competency. It can be different for me, it can be different for you, somebody sitting next to me can have a different competency. But when we give them access to an equitable tool and let them work at their own pace, they build on their own competency. Just a few case study snapshots that I wanted to show you because I don't want it to sound like a spiel about Manga High. There has been ample research that has been done. All these researches are available on the public domain. You can see these are independent research not conducted by us. This one by the British School in New Delhi, where they were seeing the progress of students. You can see the sudden jump with introduction of gamification. And this part I've taken directly from their case study, this particular thing, which says that better lesson planning and better reporting helped, it reduced the burden for teachers, and they were able to, do focused lesson plans. Many other case studies are there. Another one by Dr. Geeta Thakur on the understanding of algebra. And you can see that this is a pre-test where there are two classes of grade 7, which are fairly comparable. But in the post-test, you can see the experimental group that used Manga High had a higher jump in their mean. So I think I'm almost towards the end of the presentation and I don't want to overshoot my time. You can see we've worked with a variety of schools in India. And there are lots and lots of good things that people are saying, teachers are saying, and students and parents are saying about Manga High. As a final submission, I would like to share that this is my contact detail. My number, my email ID is all mentioned there. And also the fact that we can set up a demo for your school, for your teachers, math staff, as well as your students. And within this academic year, we have a limited number of months left in 2021-22. So we are doing customized packages for Manga High subscription that works with your school budget. So that should not be an issue at all. Thank you so much, Peenal. I hope I've kept my time.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Thank you, Ritika. So do we have any questions for Ritika here? Sujata from the chat box.
Yes, there are a couple of questions from our virtual audience. One that asks whether these tools are downloaded individually or is it a package available to schools and made available through schools. And another question from someone who thinks that the presentation was very interesting, but wants to know whether you have something planned for other subjects like social sciences.
Okay, lovely. I'll take both questions. The first question is Manga High available for individuals? Yes, it is available for individual subscriptions as well. If parents want to subscribe for it, they can. But in my personal opinion, I've worked in EdTech for about 10 years now. And an EdTech intervention is much more fruitful and much more, tight if it is done through a school, because schools can run their assessments on it. They can make sure that remediation is happening, which sometimes becomes hard or tricky for a parent. So while it is available, Manga High for home registration is there, but we work largely with schools. Like I said, 5,000 schools globally we've worked with. So that is our core focus. We don't go door to door knocking or bothering parents because there's already too much out there. So I think with schools, there is a much tighter implementation. The second part is we have only kept our focus to maths all these years, and we continue to do that because it is our mission to eradicate maths anxiety from the minds of students. And that we are doing through Manga High, because when we introduce Manga High as a game, when we introduce maths as a game, that's the narrative we are building in the minds of the students. When we say maths is tough, that's a different narrative we are building in the minds of the students. So we are completely into transforming that idea that maths is fully accessible for everyone and everybody is a maths person. So I don't see us going into social sciences or many other subjects anytime soon. We did experiment with coding, and that is something that we might look at in the future. But as of now, maths is our core focus.
Thank you, Ritika. That answers both the questions. So we have one more question from the live audience here. Can we have the mic for her?
Yeah, good afternoon. It sounds very interesting to have gamification in mathematics. I just want to know whether the teacher has the liberty to increase the level or set the level of the games for their students.
I think that's a wonderful question. The answer to that is we can't really set the level, because the student at every point is setting the level of difficulty that they're working on. Everybody starts at the easy level. So that's a given, right? Even if I'm a bright child, I'll start at the easy. If I'm struggling, I'll still start at easy, because the artificial intelligence is first going to build its knowledge about me as a child. So if I'm a very bright child, I'll finish all my easy and medium questions in, say, 20 seconds. If I'm struggling, I might take 5 or 10 minutes to do the easy and medium questions. So that's where the adaptation of difficulty level is happening. As teachers, you really don't have to worry that I have to set this level for this child or that level. That automatic adjustment will keep happening for every child for as long as they use Manga High. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika. So with this, we'll move on to the next session. Thank you so much. So now we move on to a presentation on CBE pedagogy principles and practice by Cambridge Partnership for Education. As part of this project, they train teachers to become master trainers in competency-based learning and then CBE mentors, and also developed a training program for the cascade training. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from Cambridge? Good to see you, Nivedita.
Hi, Peenal. So should I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Please, yeah, go ahead, Nivedita.
Yeah. Just give me a minute.
So while Nivedita is getting the slides up, I'll just introduce myself and who we are. My name is Stephen McGill. I'm a senior education advisor with Cambridge Partnership for Education, which is part of the University of Cambridge. And I'm going to be joined today by my colleague Nivedita Bose, who will be sharing some of her thoughts on practical applications for competency-based education. Nivedita, we can go to the next slide, please. So a bit about Cambridge Partnership for Education. We are, as I say, part of the University of Cambridge. We sit in a department called Cambridge University Press and Assessment. And it's probably helpful to explain what we do. And in essence, Cambridge Partnership for Education is focused on working with governments, international development agencies, state-level organizations who want to conduct education reform, and we support them in helping that happen. So being part of the University of Cambridge, what we're able to do is really be a bridge between the research and evidence that exists globally around education reform, and then bringing that and applying that directly to local situations. And how we do that is we try and bring together the expertise that exists across the University of Cambridge and our partners, and work together in collaboration to support the development of education reform. One of the benefits of being part of the University of Cambridge and Cambridge University Press and Assessment is that we are very much a global organization with offices over in 50 countries and with over 150 years experience. So it's really taking that experience and evidence and applying it to education reform is how Cambridge Partnership for Education works. Nivedita, if you go to the next slide, please. And that brings me on to our partnership with the British Council and CBSE. And can I just applaud the British Council and CBSE for such an ambitious project to develop competency-based education across CBSE schools. And I just want to talk to our role in that. and then hand over to Nivedita in a moment to talk about some of the principles. So our role in supporting this project was to really focus on developing high quality, competency-based lessons and plans, especially for subjects in science, math, and English. And so we did a number of things. So first of all, we designed a very bespoke training program for master trainers. And those master trainers are CBSE teachers. And we developed a program that would develop their skills so they will be able to actually then work with fellow teachers across the 3 subject areas to then train them in competency-based education. We also worked with British Council to develop a series of resources for master trainers and for ESTAG mentors as well. And those 2 groups have now been given the tools that they need to then go on and train and support teachers across the CBSE network. And finally, practically, we also developed a whole series of lesson plans, and Nivedita will talk to those in a moment. But the lesson plans are really a synthesis of the ideas around competency-based education, linking it to the local curriculum, and providing you as teachers with very practical lesson plans that you could use in the classroom tomorrow. And they're going to be freely available to you from the BC microsite. So I'll hand over now to Nivedita to talk more about some of the principles behind competency-based education and also those lesson plans as well. So Nivedita, over to you.
Thanks, Steve. And it's wonderful to be with colleagues again. I was there in person for the first 2 days, but today I'm here remotely. So let me talk a bit about our approach and our process that we used for this particular project. So let me start with the curriculum. So I want to share a bit about the thinking we do at Cambridge about competencies. Firstly, let's start with the concept of curriculum, because competencies are being discussed within a change in Indian curriculum. And there are several layers to a curriculum. Firstly, you have the curriculum as defined at a national or a state level. This would provide guidance on what should be taught, how should be taught, how every year syllabus coverage, etc., etc. This is used by schools with or without modifications to produce a school curriculum, where schools internalize what the curriculum means for them, for teachers, and to know what is expected. So for example, a grade 4 teacher knows what they have to cover in a particular year. When the teacher takes the curriculum and starts teaching it in the class, then it becomes the taught curriculum. So where the act of teaching adds another perspective to the original intention. And lastly, when the teaching is done, then the question is, what have they learned? And that is the learned curriculum. So these 4 levels are highlighted in the Cambridge approach to improving education. And this is available to access on our website for anybody. So if you go to cambridgeassessment.org and look for Cambridge approach to improving education, it's a PDF document that you can access in case you are interested to dig deeper into this. This use of the curriculum by different audiences for different reasons can lead to variations and learners from different classrooms and schools having different experiences, but all learners fundamentally are learning the same curriculum. So where do the competencies come in here? Competencies are underpinning the curriculum. So sometimes the visible curriculum is backed by something called unstated curriculum. This is often the unwritten curriculum, which encapsulates the ethos, vision, and attributes of a curriculum that should develop regardless of phase or the subject. So competencies historically have fallen into the unstated curriculum, with some schools prioritizing some competencies and 21st century skills over others, and different schools having different approaches to the competencies. Competencies have always been developed, but have they been explicitly thought about? So let's talk about that. Competency-based education in some ways is about pulling competencies out of the unstated curriculum and making them an explicit focus at each level of curriculum. thinking they are accounted for in national plans. School think about them during school-wide curriculum planning. Teachers consider them when teaching, and learners walk out of the school knowing they have developed them. At the moment, you are in the position of thinking about the school curriculum and the taught curriculum. What approach to competencies will work at a school level? And what exactly should a teacher do to support competency-based learning in a classroom? Focusing on the classroom, and sometimes schools need to think about is the curriculum is not one amorphous set of requirements or lists or content to cover or skills to embed. So what is it? So, and how do we teach innovation? It is structured and organized into phases of education based on the age of children, grades, and into the subjects such as English, math, science. For each grade, and subject competencies will have an impact on that. For each teacher, the question isn't how do I teach innovation, but for my grade and my subject, what do I expect to see from learners, and how do I nurture their development in each competence? For example, innovation in English may be about sentence structure or language use, while innovation in science may be about experimental design or how learners connect science knowledge with their real life. A competency is often something that cannot be taught but developed over time. So this means thinking less about what to teach and more about what opportunities are given to learners to demonstrate a competency and explore the curriculum knowledge and skills in a way that will help them develop that competency. As such, there are two major practices. So there are two major practices that are being used in the classrooms. So one is effective lesson planning. So opportunities for learners to demonstrate and develop competencies are planned for, and formative assessment so that you as teachers understand where learners are and can adapt teaching in a lesson or between lessons to develop their competencies. A competency-based learning approach is about effective teaching and being mindful of the competencies that should be developed in lesson. So this was the thinking behind our project that we collaborated with CBSE and British Council. Now let me take you through some nitty-gritties of the project. So as during this project, Cambridge got the opportunity to work closely with CBSE and the British Council to introduce competencies in the planning done by teachers. We designed and delivered a training for 360 master trainers, as you've already heard, in which what, why, and how of CBSE was covered, in addition to the training skills. The training highlighted that we need to embed competencies in our curriculum to make it align to NEP 2020, so that it is at par with international standards, while we preserve our unique culture and traditions. And most importantly, we showed the teachers that they did not need to start from scratch. Competencies can be embedded in the existing curriculum, which is provided by CBSE and NCERT, and along with many useful resources. So, for example, if you look at NCERT textbooks, then they already give you so many activities which address various competencies. It's just how you interpret them and how you use them. So taking inputs from the participants and using the NCERT learning outcomes and the assessment frameworks developed by Alpha Plus, we designed a set of model lesson plans, which are based on curriculum content from grade 6 to 10. And they show how teaching and learning can be used to help develop competencies in 21st century skills. Now, for these lesson plans, we chose three main aspects of lesson planning, because every school has a different format of using their lesson plans. So we picked up what was essential for lesson planning, that is objectives, content, and assessment. So what you want your children to learn, how would you facilitate that learning, and then in the end, how would you know that the students have learned that? So this is the strategy that we picked, and we worked on that. So over the 6 days, teachers worked on various lesson plans, which were then reviewed by the trainers. And in the end, we created benchmarked, consistent lesson plans for each subject. Let me give you a glimpse of one of the lesson plans from each subject and see how we have embedded competencies there. So if you look at this lesson plan from English, grade 6, this is about, the story is named Who Did Patrick's Homework? And the LO from NCERT is child reads variety of texts in English and identifies main idea, character, sequence of ideas, and also uses meaningful sentences. So how you embed competency here is, rather than getting children to start reading in the beginning, the teacher is asking them to think about homework and vote whether it is fair or unfair to get homework, and whether how children do homework at home is important. And then you are asking them for their reasons. So you are getting them to think right in the beginning of the lesson. Then you make them read the lesson, and then in the middle of the lesson, teacher is asking to stop the reading and ask the learners their expressions, their impressions about Patrick, what kind of a person he is, and what words they would use to describe Patrick. So you are putting them on the path of thinking rather than prescribing what a child should do in the class. So this is how we are incorporating competencies like critical thinking, collaboration, communication, because you can use here think, pair, share, you can use their pair work, and so on. If I show you a maths lesson from grade 10, this is about solving quadratic equations. Now here the teacher has given them an equation to solve, but the teacher is looking at the answer, but more importantly, teacher is asking them to discuss their approach in pairs. So what was their approach to factorizing, and how would they check whether it was correct? And they're comparing with each other. Then another activity is to give them a piece of work with errors in it and asking them to correct it. So this helps them also to identify their own way of working and spot their own mistakes. So that is addressing a competency like learning to learn, which is metacognition. If I go to science next, this is a lesson from grade 7 on acids and bases, where we want them to do a lab activity. Now, usually a lab activity as a science teacher, which I used to do in the beginning, is give them instructions and ask them to do the lab activity and record their observations. Well, now let us put some competencies in there. So before we ask them to record their observations, here we are asking them to test whether a given substance is acidic or basic. We ask them to predict. What do you think, whether this particular substance, for instance, a soap solution or milk or lemon juice, would it be acidic or basic? So they're writing their predictions, then they are doing a test with litmus or any other indicator, and then they are writing their observations. And then the teacher is asking them to compare whether their predictions match the observations or not. And if they don't, what is the reason behind that? So again, you see, you are giving them the skills of formulating hypothesis at a very basic level and also checking it. Then how do they make a real life connection? So the teacher is asking them to do a group discussion on how can we use litmus paper in daily life, and how it can help us to ensure safety in our surroundings. So this makes them think, where can they use litmus tests? Probably to test water samples at home, the water they are drinking, whether it's acidic or basic, whether it is neutral, safe for consumption. So you are putting the children on the path of also thinking about the environment. So you see, these are the 3 examples that I showed you, which also, tell you that it is not difficult. We have very robust curriculum content, as mentioned earlier by Rebecca in her presentation. All we need to do is tweak a little bit in the planning and also how we teach in the class, so that we can address competencies in the classroom itself. Finally, let's come to assessment for learning. So this is a brief extract from one of our PDFs on our website on assessment for learning, which is again freely available for you to access. And there's a lot more resources available on our website for teachers in case anybody is interested. You just need to search for this link, or just Google Cambridge International or Cambridge Assessment on Google, and you will get it. So let us see how we embedded AFL in our project. So these 5 strategies were at the heart of it. First one was that the learning intentions should be shared with the students. They should not just be in the planning and the lesson plans of the teachers. They need to be communicated to the children in their language, what they understand. Then the class activities should lend themselves to opportunities to assess them. So if you are doing a group discussion, there should be time for you to move around and listen and see whether what children are discussing is fine or not, whether you need to intervene and provide some kind of scaffolding. Then the feedback needs to be very concrete. You need to tell children what steps to do next. A teacher cannot afford to give a vague feedback so that the child is left confused. Activating students as learning resources for one another would mean peer coaching, peer discussion, observing each other's work and giving ideas to each other. Of course, the teacher is the watchdog in the background. Then all these activities are going to lead to students becoming owners of their own learning. So we focused on these aspects of assessment for learning, and this is very visible in the lesson plans. So what are the next steps? So to begin with, as we did in our training, let's start small. To begin with, as you've already been told, all the lesson plans are already there on CBSE microsite, along with the assessment framework and the question banks. So you would find the assessment framework, the lesson plan, and also associated questions in the question bank. So please go ahead, download them, go through them, and try to use them in the classroom, because these are samples which will help you design many, many more lessons on the same format. So with that, I come to the end of this presentation. I hope it was useful for you. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to take along with Steve here. Thank you.
So do we have any questions from the audience here? Or can we check the chat box, Sujata?
Yes, a couple of questions. So there is one question on asking what are the possible challenges that teachers might face when they implement competency-based education, and how could they overcome those? And the question is also around, does competency include affective skills along with cognitive skills?
Okay, I'll take the second one first. Yes, definitely, because when you are designing competency-based lessons, you are looking at the holistic development of children. So competencies such as collaboration, communication, learning to learn, they directly or indirectly address the affective learning for students, because they're working together, they're building relationships, they are building relationship with the teacher, because teacher is not prescriptive, teacher is a facilitator in the classroom, and teacher is very accessible and accommodating. So there it addresses the affective domain. Now, as for the first question, it's a pretty broad question. So when you say challenges, there could be different areas. It could be not in the content, but in your planning. You could face challenges in your planning, for which you have some model lesson plans. And I would strongly recommend looking at NCERT learning outcomes, because that's a beautiful document which tells you what to expect when you are teaching a particular topic in class. The other challenge, please go on. Yeah.
No, I was just going to, I think the challenges are many. I would actually refer back to the work that we've done with British Council and CBSE, as well as the lesson plans. One of the observations that we made throughout is the challenge of changing, introducing or trying something new in the classroom. And I think the British Council and CBSE were right in their project to design programs for master trainers and mentors, because I think one of the things that teachers need when they're trying to make a change is support. So that's support in terms of initial training, but also support in terms of sharing ideas, being ready to fail, being ready to discuss how to change. So I think peer support, school leadership support, and training support are all instrumental in helping make a change. So I think in a way, I would reinforce what Nivedita says. The lesson plans are certainly a great tool, but equally, I think the program that BC and CBSE have put in place is a great starting point to help with that support in the classroom as well.
Thank you, Steve and Nivedita. Sujata, I hope that answers the questions. Thank you for the session. So now after this session, let us have a look at our library video before we move on to our next two EdTech presentations. So moving on, we have our next EdTech presentation from Britannica Digital Learning. They provide resources for schools, universities, public libraries, and learning institutions across the globe. And today they will deliver a live demo of their resources. Can we now switch to the screen for the presentation from Britannica? Laurie, I would request you to keep up to the 10 minutes for your presentation, followed by a 5 minutes Q&A session, and we'll notify you with a beep at the end of 10 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you so much for your introduction. My name is Laurie Barton, and I'm the lead curriculum development manager at Britannica, and it's my pleasure to speak with you today about Britannica resources. So I wanted to speak with you today a little bit about who Britannica is. We are one of the world's most experienced knowledge companies, and we provide digital content for teachers and learners around the globe. You can see that we reach over 150 million students across 83 countries and in a variety of languages as well. I also want to speak with you today more specifically and share with you our Britannica Launch Packs and Britannica Lesson Learning Pathways resources. I'll start out today with Britannica Launch Packs. All of the resources that we will be looking at today are editorially created and collated collections of information. Our Britannica Launch Packs can be thought of as bundles or packs of information that can help to save teachers time when planning for resources, allowing for in-class student-led research. You can use our packs offline, and there are ways to personalize packs, which I'll share with you in just a moment. Our Britannica Launchpacks resource is a web-based resource, so it integrates with the technology you already have in your classrooms, whether that be a simple internet connection or if you're working within an LMS within your classroom. I'm sharing with you now the main screen of our Britannica Launchpacks. Britannica Launchpacks has been provided for students across all ages, but we'll focus specifically on our secondary resources today. And I'll actually take you inside one of our packs on viruses. Our packs are visually appealing for students to use and can be used both in and outside of the classroom. Each pack contains a variety of resources such as activities, articles, images, and video content. Our packs are also very, very helpful for independent learning because they have support features for students, which you can see within each of our editorially created encyclopedia articles. You'll notice at the top that we actually have the ability to differentiate between 3 reading levels, meaning that no matter how confident your students are on a subject or with the English language, they will be able to find content that meets their needs. We also have the ability to listen aloud to all article content throughout the Britannica Launchpacks to help reinforce that learning for students. This is also, again, really wonderful for remote learning opportunities. We even have the ability to double-click on a word in the text to receive a definition of that word, which will help us to better understand, especially domain-specific vocabulary. Our Britannica Launchpacks are available in the sciences, and so there is a lot of domain-specific vocabulary that students might come across in their own research. This can really help support them. Not only do we have these differentiation and support features, but we allow teachers and students to take these packs of information and customize them. You can add your own content into packs, and even within our articles, you can add what are called annotations. For today's demonstration, I've added a few annotations that you can see here. Annotations might take the form of vocabulary. They might take the form of evidence or even summarization of information. And this can be used for a teacher to support a student in independent learning, or it can be used as an assessment for learning in which students can actually annotate materials that teachers can review. Annotations can be shared and printed for that review. I'd also like to speak with you briefly about our lesson learning pathways. Our lesson learning pathways are complete coverage of secondary science and mathematics. They include a classroom element, homework element, and revision opportunities as well. And they've all been created by, again, our editors and subject matter specialists. There are lesson plans for teachers, but professional development best practice is embedded into the lessons themselves, making it very easy for you to provide engaging materials for your students. I'm sharing with you just one of our sample lessons for our secondary science. You'll see that our lessons all start out with learning outcomes that relate directly to student curriculum and help them to understand what they need to know for that particular session. We have engaging tasks such as this opening task in which students need to think about the vibrations that they see in a rubber band. So taking an everyday occurrence, a rubber band, and actually applying the science to that, helping students to understand how science affects their daily lives, engaging with them, but also providing a flexibility with how you can use, again, materials that you're familiar with. You don't need specialist science equipment for this. We also have bespoke video content for each of our lessons. This video has been created specifically with the teaching and learning goals for this material in mind. I'll play just a few brief seconds of this as well.
How do you measure a wave? You can calculate its height, length, and speed.
So all of our classroom lessons and our homework lessons do have additional video content, again, that can be downloaded. And we also have practical tasks throughout our materials that help students get out of their seats, get involved in their learning, and move away from the idea of using a textbook or a text itself to simply read and then memorize that information. Now, all of this material that we've just looked through today, all of the Launchpad material that we looked through today, I apologize, all of the learning lesson pathways that we've looked through today have actually been built within the Thinky platform. The Thinky platform doesn't only allow you to create lesson materials such as Britannica has done, but it's a collaborative space for teachers and students to use. What's more, you can use the Britannica content through the Thinky platform to create personalized learning pathways for your students and for your classroom. You can attach competencies to those content pieces. So you take the Britannica content pieces and attach competencies such as collaboration or thinking scientifically or problem solving. And based on students working through Britannica materials, you're able to award them and their achievements with badges and certificates, and helping to gamify their learning and provide that wow and achievement moment for students. Not only that, but the Thinky platform actually allows data reporting and analysis and gives recommended actions for you as staff members, as teachers and administrators to help identify where gaps may be occurring in your teaching and learning and in your curriculum so that you can actually modify that teaching and learning to help support all of the students in their needs. So the Britannica Launchpacks resource is web-based, and the Britannica LLP resources are through the Thinky platform. I wanted to just end my discussion with you today by letting you know that both the Britannica resources as well as the Thinky platform are happy to allow free trials and explorations of materials if you're interested in learning a little bit more. And we both have very supportive post-subscription help with things like training and professional development opportunities. At Britannica, we do offer resources for teachers and students to get started, but then to continue to use these products effectively within the classroom so that you're not just given something and take it away, but we will actually continue to provide interesting and engaging ways to use our resources. Thank you again for your time. I do believe I stuck within that 10 minutes because I haven't heard a bell go off, but I'd like to turn over for questions now.
Thank you, Laurie. That was well within the time. So do we have any questions from the live audience here? Or from the chat box, Sujata?
So a question is, how does your product align with competency-based education? And so how will it be helpful for teachers in their classes?
Thank you so much for that question. So the Britannica Launchpacks resource is a great way to ensure that your teachers can spend time focusing on competency-based learning. The Launchpacks resource provides editorially verified and collated information so that your teachers don't need to spend time resourcing. Instead, they can actually spend time allowing students to look at that research themselves, and then within the classroom, focus on testing the skills around that information. So for example, the Launchpacks resource works really well in a remote or blended learning solution in which students would digest the research beforehand and in the classroom actually go through practical investigation. The LLPs have also been designed around ensuring that students are practically engaged in the classroom. And again, the competency skills have been embedded in the lessons themselves. So things like group discussion and collaboration, independent study, presentation skills, you'll find these throughout the LLP resources so that you actually, again, have those activities ready to go within your classroom.
Thank you, Laurie. That answers the question. Do we have any more questions? Thank you, Laurie. That's the close of the session.
Excellent. Thank you for your time all and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. So moving on to the last EdTech presentation for the day, we have Century Tech. Can we have the screen for the presentation from Century Tech?
Yes, we
They
should
will be
be on the screen
demonstrating
now.
how. Yes. So they'll be demonstrating how AI platform that is transforming the teaching and learning. Will would request you to keep up to the 10 minutes time for your session, followed by 5 minutes for Q&A. And we'll notify you with a beep sound after the end of the 10 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you ever so much. And thank you so much. It's lovely to see you all today. My name's Will Hall. I'm a curriculum lead at Century. I'm also joined by my wonderful colleague, Alice, our English lead, who will talk about content a bit later on in the presentation. But as we're so pushed for time, let's jump straight in. Okay, at Century, in short, we believe every student deserves a world-class education tailored to their individual needs. And the key word there is tailored. It's time to move away from outdated legacy education technology. And how we do it? Well, we combine the latest in learning science, artificial intelligence, and neurosciences. Very briefly, because I'm going to show you the platform in just a second, how Century works. So we have a truly recommended pathway with integrated formative and summative assessments. The key term here really is deep learning and, of course, actual personalization. The pathway will adapt and change based on your students' needs at any moment in time, be that to support them because they're doing well and they need stretch and challenge, or to help them out and to find those prerequisites, those links that they might be missing. We also have advanced analytics and easy to use dashboards, not just for students, but also for teachers as well. The underlying theme here, metacognition. How do your learners understand themselves as students? And how do your teachers quickly react to data to make those suitable interventions in the classroom? Number 3, endless content options. Any curriculum, any language. The key driver behind our content at Century is challenge and support, localization to any curricula, and multiple subjects. And with that pathway, that personalized learning pathway for your learners, a key term for us is the benefits of interleaving, the benefits on student retention. But look, I'd just love to show you the platform, and I know we're so pushed for time, so I'm going to show you a quick video about Century. There's a couple of screenshots of what our platform could look like in different languages, so that's it translated into Hindi. Of course, Century works on all internet-enabled devices, very low bandwidth requirements, 3G and above, and you're good to go. So let me show you the platform as a quick video about Century, and then we'll talk about the content coverage and our next steps.
In this video, we will explore the student and teacher side of Century. Century uses AI to recommend learning to students and provides teachers with easy to access data to support assessment, interventions, and planning. This is the student's recommended pathway. It shows them the topics they should study next based on their strengths and areas for improvement. The pathway is populated by micro-lessons, known as nuggets. Students begin their learning journey by completing one of our diagnostic assessments. Diagnostics are baseline assessments that kickstart the recommendation engine. They do not receive feedback on their performance in a diagnostic. Every time a learner completes a diagnostic or nugget, their pathway will update based on what Century thinks they should study next. Nuggets with this symbol have been recommended by Century as an area to improve on. Let's take a closer look at a nugget. These are bite-sized pieces of learning. They are created by our wonderful team of ex-teachers. Nuggets include learning materials in the form of videos and slideshows, followed by questions. This isn't a test, so learners can go back to the learning materials at any stage. They receive immediate feedback. At the end of the nugget, learners can select to try again with different questions. As a teacher, you can also set nuggets for your learners, which will sit at the front of their pathway. In addition, the platform also recommends nuggets as a memory boost to ensure learners review content at the optimum time. Your learners can view all of the nuggets in a course that has been assigned to them in their My Courses tab. Here they can check on their recent activity, course progress, and complete a useful nugget. They can check in on their progress across an entire course in the Courses tab. When you log into Sentry as a teacher, you are immediately taken to the teacher dashboard. This is where you can easily analyze data on your various classes to support learner progress. Let's take a look at data on a class-wide level. Notice how learners start the courses by each completing diagnostic assessments and are then taken to different parts of the course. Here you are seeing personalization in action, as the platform is taking your learners to the micro lessons that they need the most. We can delve deeper into any micro lesson that a learner has completed. We can see a history of attempts, scores, and time taken. We can also see how long learners have spent studying the learning material. Digging even deeper, we can see each answer a learner has given. All data seen here is easily exportable to Excel and can be time-stamped to quickly monitor usage in and out of the classroom. The Markbook takes on a different meaning when you have set specific micro lessons for your learners. This is now perfect for conducting assessment for learning. At first, a clear visualization of how your learners have mastered a certain topic, and by navigating to the next tab, we can dig even deeper. In the Nuggets tab, you are able to view a question-level analysis on any micro lesson completed. Here you can quickly identify class-wide misconceptions, allowing you to react to the data and make suitable interventions. The Interventions tab combines time, effort, and progress to act as another lens through which to view your learners. Students in this quadrant exhibit positive learning behaviours, and students here have been flagged for needing extra support, as they are putting in effort but are not making as much progress as their peers. Here you will be able to see how active your learners have been on the platform. Clicking on a student takes you to their learner dashboard. Here we can see recent strengths and weaknesses, recommendations on what learners should be focusing on, and a history of achievement. This page is ideal for one-to-ones with tutors, parental and guardian meetings, and for student reflection. Once courses are assigned, there is no need for teachers to set work for their learners. However, setting work on Sentry takes just a few clicks. Not only will your class all have the same micro lessons at the start of their pathways, they will also get recommendations based on how they perform, ensuring you get the data for purposeful assessment for learning, and micro lessons are differentiated to support or stretch. For senior stakeholders, the Leadership Dashboard is a convenient way to access and monitor data across your organisation. Quickly see how individual subjects, classes, and students are performing. This is great for informing a reward system and also to highlight areas of good practice. Your account manager will also work with you to produce bespoke data reports. That was Sentry in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much for watching that video. I hope that's got you excited. I'm going to hand over very quickly to our wonderful English specialist, Ali.
Thanks, Will. So in the Sentry content library, users have access to over 5,000 micro lessons for maths, science, and English as a first language. These could be used to support teaching for the CBSE curriculum and in these subject areas in classes 6 to 10. In addition, Sentry is a content agnostic platform, and content can be uploaded and integrated into our systems to support learners. This means all curricular and learning objectives can be supported. As you've seen, all languages can be supported on the platform.
Excellent. Thank you, Ali. I know we are almost approaching time, so we'd love to go in to all of these wonderful numbers and usage statistics and impact case studies. They are all on our website, and we'd love to talk to you about them in far more detail. So please do reach out. Currently, we're also in India as we speak, and over 45 countries around the world. There's a lovely quote there from the principal of Podar International School in Mumbai, a brief kind of smorgasbord of the different companies and school groups that we currently work with. There's a lot more to that list as well. please do find out more. Get in contact. If that video excited you, if you're excited about true personalization and using technology to support teachers and students, get in contact and send us an email. We'd love to go through the platform in far more depth and detail with you. We work with schools, school groups, resellers, governments. Essentially, we'll work with everyone. And our mission really is to support your learning. And there's the beat. So my final thing, join us at the India Future Learning Summit. We'll pop a link in the YouTube chat function now. And yeah, over to you guys for questions. And thank you ever so much for listening.
So do we have any questions for them from the chat box?
Yes, a question from our virtual audience is whether this can be used as a classroom tool, or is it best used for independent study?
That is a wonderful question because the answer is both. So Sentry works brilliant in a blended learning environment. So where learners have access to, say, to internet-enabled devices. So a teacher could set a specific micro lesson, get the data, then make those interventions. So using Sentry for formative assessment. But also Sentry works perfectly on an independent usage model where students can get the personalized learning they need to support themselves outside of the classroom. So Sentry really works in multiple ways, and we love working with schools and different groups of schools to figure out the best usage model for the platform. But yeah, in short, the answer would be both.
Thank you, Will. Sujata, any more questions? So thank you, Will and Alice, for the session. We'll move on from now.
Thank you.
So after all these great sessions, we will now move towards the closing of the event. Before we close, do we have any question on the entire event from the live audience here or from the chat box? Sujata, any comments that you would like to share that has been highlighted during our chat, during the entire session?
No, we've been joined by educators from around the country, from the north, south, east, and west, from varied places. And everyone has been very appreciative of the session here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujata. Just to check, Varsha, do we have Rowan here? Sorry. Sure. So Rowan will be here in two more minutes to close the event officially. There he is. So after all these wonderful sessions and question and answer round, I invite Rowan Kennedy, Deputy Director, British Council, India, to come on stage and provide a vote of thanks and close this series of open days for us.
Thank you. Thank you. And sorry, I got called away for a minute or two upstairs. I mean, let me start by thanking all of you who have joined us today. So starting with our friends, colleagues and partners at CBSE, all the teachers, school leaders, principals who've joined us online, our partners in the UK, Alpha Plus, Cambridge, Naris, Ectis, DIT for organising the EdTech presentations. Thank you for joining us over the 3 days. Thank you too to all the EdTech companies who joined us virtually and gave us those fantastic presentations on their tools and on their products. I hope that was really useful, and I hope that shows some of what is possible when that kind of technology is deployed. Over the past 2 days, and I don't have the statistics for today yet, but the first 2 days alone, we've had 22,000 views of the YouTube channel of this event. So that, I think, really shows the interest of the school fraternity in making a shift towards competency-based education. And we've been thinking with CBSE as to how we take this project forward. So as a next step, we'll be starting cascade training with 2,000 teachers for item writing and for pedagogy. And that's starting in just a few weeks' time on the 18th of October. So we're already making plans to take this forward. And going forward, as it has been today, as it has been over the last 2 days, your participation, the participation of you teachers, principals, school leaders is going to be really, really important. It's going to be so vital for us to have your active participation and engagement in this program. So please do stay connected. Please do stay in touch. Please do get involved in program activities. And we really look forward to taking this project, to moving this project on with your participation. But for now, from us, that's all. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a good afternoon, evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowan. With this, we close today's event and our series of the 3-day open days. On behalf of the British Council, we would like to invite you all to join us for a high tea in Charbagh. And those who would like to take a tour of the library, a quick tour of our British Council library on the first floor, our staff will guide you. Thank you once again to everyone who's joined us virtually. Have a great evening. Thank you.